Yeah, so, I was quite curious about this particular space, the NFT space. And I was thinking like, okay, like how do I really get to interact with someone like who has actually been into this particular space, even though this particular space is relatively new, I would say.
Sure.
But still, you are actively involved in it. Maybe let's start with your beginning on this space, on how did you get into this space?
Yeah, yeah. So I met my fellow co-founders, Conlon and Nate, in Crypto Voxels, which is one of those OG metaverse, very early on projects where everyone, if you think about it, it's like Minecraft on the blockchain, really. It's very easy for someone to come in and start building on your own land, almost in a very Minecraft simplified user experience. So I met the fellow co-founders in a game, in a virtual reality game, and we just started collaborating on projects. It was a very vibrant, much smaller community back then. So we ran scavenger hunts together. We participated in community ran contests together. So just really enjoyed working each other, and we both found that we specialized in different specialties. Nate is more on the design, creative side. Colin's more of a coder, right? He has a game dev engineering background, and I'm more on the marketing as well as just like, talking and activating people, basically trying to think of cool new ideas of ways to interact. So that's essentially how I got into the crypto NFT scene. My background has actually been in tech and gaming for a bit, so there was a lot of already like synergy coming in, just talking on Discord, interacting with people on Twitter. It's very natural for me because I was already very much involved in the gaming space.
Yeah, interesting how you got started there. And talking about this particular space, you said like you come from a background of marketing, and then I just went through your background as well, and I realized a lot of experience that you have is in particular marketing into the space. So is it something different to now become a co-founder and to sort of market this new territory altogether, right? So it's not just a regular thing that you are marketing, but you are marketing something altogether new. What kind of challenge do you feel in this particular space in terms of marketing, right? What approach do you use? Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually similarities, and there's obvious differences too. So maybe I'll start with the similarities of it. So marketing in every single previous company I've been with, marketing has been drastically different from place to place. As a successful marketer, you really just have to be adaptable and fluid, and just be able to pinpoint where the efficiencies lie, where some things could be optimized and made better, and just be like an active problem solver. So in that sense, I feel like you could take those skills and readjust it to every single company, every different industry as a whole, as well as like storytelling element. If you really want to zoom out, marketing or successful marketing is effective storytelling. You want to have something that emotionally resonate with people on a much wholesome, genuine level. So Async really allowed me to have that platform of storytelling, not only because of its tool set and what the artists and the creators get to make, but just like that whole entire platform is like a stage in which you could effectively have some more deeper, more profound storytelling. Um, if we want to touch upon the differences and like, the hardships, I do think NFT and blockchain space is so new, so fast, right? So competitive, that things, yeah. And I had thought the gaming industry
Yeah.
was competitive, right? This is just 10x more, and everyone just they don't sleep. Here's
Yes.
the pros and cons of decentralization. Something's always happening, something across the globe, and you just find out yourself like always glued to Twitter. There's always something happening, either in this time zone, another time zone, and so forth. So it is a little bit hard to keep up, so to speak. And I would say that's definitely one of the challenges. There's just so much information, so much different things happening. You almost have to develop a little self-filter for
Mhm.
yourself as well as for your team to kind of like, does this really matter to us? Or is this just like a fad or this new shiny flavor of the week, right? We don't need to follow that. Just have that little grounded filter for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there are no steps like on any other segment. Like where in the past, like, there used to be like, okay, how do you get to, I don't know, transformations, right? Digital transformation as such, right? You will find a lot of books or even written on there. But then for this particular space, like you find your ways. I believe, right? You explore and then get going with that, right? So yeah, interesting. And you touched a bit on Async. How did this started as a company? Like in a way, there must be an idea where you bought into this particular idea and say, hey, maybe I can contribute there, and this is where I'm going to contribute there, right? So how did that happen?
Yeah, so I would attribute it to Colin collecting, being a very active NFT art collector. First and foremost, he made a lot of friends on the artist side. He was having fun. He's always a very early adopter of everything new and like very technically interesting. So as he was collecting all these like, well, I would say normal or like the most early on NFT art, which are just static JPEGs, right? He had an idea, and this is his gamer developer mind coming in. He had an idea of what if the collector was also involved in the artwork, right?
Ah,
Like, I don't want to just collect a finished piece of art. I want to be able to influence it or have some sort of gamified element with that artwork, and thus the idea of deconstructing an artwork to its most basic elements and then giving the collector, the final collector, some utility and some responsibility, some sort of like action that they could do to actually go back and kind of like influence the final visual output of the artwork. That's where the overall idea was conceptualized. And ever since then, I think we just took async kind of beyond what's just layered artwork and just changing the look of the artwork. We brought it to music. We made things generative because like we deconstructed artwork and deconstructed music, and then we reconstructed it for people, like on a different scale. And then you could just reach such a bigger audience than, just a normal one-on-one collector. Because like in the beginning, it was very much like, if you have a lot of money or if you have a lot of, crypto, then, that collecting that exclusive one-of-one piece makes a lot of sense to you. But what we kind of see as the future is the everyday person with, normal disposable income being able and partake and collect NFTs from their favorite artists and musicians at a much more accessible price point. So that's where you see like the evolution of like async being this exclusive, programmable, very special, unique, bespoke, platform going, starting to shift over to like generative projects of like multiple pieces, multiple editions in a single unified collection from that single artist.
mhm. And interesting what you're doing on the music space as well. Like, are there any other company who are doing something very similar to what you're doing?
Yes, I think there are several, and we're mostly like creator facing tooling, right? We're enabling the musicians to create unique generative works. I think there's other platforms that do like maybe one aspect of what we're doing, but Async's overarching goal is really to become like this like one-stop shop for a lot of musicians and artists who have different needs, different wants, different objectives of why they're entering the NFTs or utilizing NFTs to activate their audience. And we're just going to continue to keep expanding our product offerings beyond just what we have right now, which is like programmable music, generative music. Some things, in the pipeline or at least in consideration is like, other blockchain support, tapping into other partnerships and marketplaces where, we become almost like a retention element for them. So like, some things that, like the Coinbases, the Krakens, they're all exploring NFT marketplaces, but a success factor of like a good marketplace is having exclusive, fresh, very unique content. So I think, Async is very well positioned to provide those kind of really interesting content for their community to engage with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you mentioned about different exchanges, right? Perhaps being interested in the space. And do you think, with the way, there is a wave, there is a volatility in the crypto space, right? As soon as, there's a, let's say that the price scales up with the BTC, and all of a sudden you see everything, popping up, everything becomes green. Does that have some kind of impact on the NFT space as well?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that right now. I think there's definitely a little bit of a exuberance, as well as just like people like, coming in for the hype, the FOMO, everything. But because of this market downturn or this market correction that we're seeing, you're also, there's a silver lining to this, whereas like you see who the true artists are, the true builders, the true believers, right? The people who are collecting and interacting with this space, because they want to, as well as like there's a more wholesome, genuine reason for it. As with any early like technology, if you want to use a .com or other historic examples, the first initial wave is always like a little bit rational, a little bit more like volatile, right? And then eventually, as more and more infrastructure is set up, a lot more processes, regulations, more projects coming into the space, things are going to stabilize. So I wasn't really here for the previous, crypto winter, right? But there's much more. There are much more projects now. There's much more platforms, active and just still growing the space than it was last cycle. So we're very confident, as well as like optimistic, that like it just keeps on layering, pun intended, I guess. It keeps on layering on top of each other. And then that's where the future is. Like it should not be that influence with, crypto market volatility, but we're just so early with everything right now. And it's a matter of education, I think, as well as like more mainstream adoption.
Yeah. And, talking about I wanted to ask you earlier this question, but then I completely got sidetracked about this music, Async music classic. I'm kind of thinking there must be a testing cycle that you ran, or the idea sparked, and then you wanted to test out first. What was the creative process there involved in terms of saying, okay, I'm going to maybe give it a try in terms of testing out the music industry itself? Or it was more of a demand that you'd received, and then you say, okay, maybe we should try this out, right? So how was that started?
Yeah, so whenever Async launches a new major product offering, I think there's a lot of collaborative talks among interested artists, or like what we call the launch artists, the artists or the musicians that we want to launch with. As we were conceptualizing Async music, we got actual creators involved with our talks, our conceptualization. We made sure that we had plenty of the musicians' input on like what their creative flow is like, what they care about, like how to creatively express themselves, as well as what makes it really interesting to them. And they're the ones that actually provided a lot of the music industry, like backdrop and context that, our team not necessarily might have natively or naturally considered. So the learnings from them were just, absolute mind blowing. Like I had no idea, the music industry right now is so antiquated, basically, of like, this is how it has been for several decades. The musicians themselves are almost like a manufactured good, kind of removed from the actual fan base, right? And the power of blockchain, transparency, decentralization, you could bring them all together in a way that they've never been able to before, as well as like financially support themselves for, you know, doing something that they love. Like I feel like that's just a dream ideal scenario for so many creatives. So in that sense, like I think we explored a lot of, you know, conversations with the creators, made sure they're like on board with it, as well as like we picked some, you know, musicians to, you know, try it out and launch it with us. And it's been, I would say, fairly successful and at least very groundbreaking on the music NFT side since we launched.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting space, and I wanted to ask you this question because I wanted to really understand the problem that you're trying to solve with this particular, you know, offering that you had, right? So, and maybe my question was more indicated towards the actual problem itself, and yeah, so the problem itself is about maybe trying to create your own music at the same time creating the NFT music, right? So if I understood you correctly.
Yeah, it's actually not that much different, and I was learning it for the first time too. So for digital musicians, they're already constructing their songs on a, you know, like a digital software, right? So like whatever tools that they use, the drum track, the percussion track, the vocal track, all those are already on its different layers and separated, and then they actually master it within their tool, and then they publish it to like a Spotify or, you know, whatever distribution channel. What Async, you know, basically allows them to do is you could just export your separate stems, which is their music layer, on its own, upload some different variations of it, and then it spits out like unique one-of-one songs in a combination that you might have not even, you know, considered before. So the building blocks are already there, the way that they're already making their music. And it's just a matter of like a different way of presenting it and distributing it to their fan base. That I think that's what was the aha moment for them. Like, oh, I don't need to flatten this and just make one final song. I could have 2,000 different variations of the song, and my fans get to take one provably unique version of it home, basically. And that's the, you know, Async Music Blueprint offering.
And I don't know if your platform is also integrated with third party, for example, OpenSea. Is that the way it works, or it is completely independent of any other platforms? Like, how does that really work in practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. Third party platforms like OpenSea, Variable, they index and they grab, you know, across all platforms. They aim to be like an aggregator of sorts, like an eBay, right? And the beauty of blockchain and NFTs is like everyone's open. So if you want to, you could grab another platforms like metadata and whatnot and read their smart contracts, and you don't really need their permission per se. Essentially, it's all interoperable, and that's definitely what we aim to do too. We're partnering up with many different NFT platforms, regardless of, you know, formatting and whatnot, because really that's the whole beauty of that blockchain ethos, right? Like, you know, the rising tide should raise all boats, and that's and I think that's, you know, ultimately kind of like maybe too utopian and maybe too idealistic, but at least it's something to strive for, right? Like, yeah, like that's, NFT in itself, like the success metric of the NFT is really going to come back to the community base and how much does the community want it? How much will the community get behind a certain project or a certain platform and power it up? Yeah.
So it's not very exclusive.
No, definitely not. We're trying not to be. And I think that's why our creators like us. I think that's why, you know, time and time again, they come back because, you know, we're hoping to just enable creators to create what they, you know, they dream up of, right? Yeah. And so many traditional Web2 companies have been like, traditionally gated. And that's what's causing certain problems right now, right, with certain industries.
Yeah. But this particular space, NFT, is quite popular amongst the people who are aware of the space itself, right? So, and it is quite big. People have made lots of money, and they're quite curious about the industry. And there is a big portion of the population who are pretty much not aware of this particular space, right? And it is, I mean, it's very new, but there's almost a disparity. There's almost a disparity between the ones like who are going in a fast train, and people like who are just getting to know about the NFT, or people like my father generation. They don't know anything about it, right? So how do you plan to connect those people like who has no ideas, and maybe they have their own creative space? They may be very smart at what they create, right? So is there a plan as such that you want to sort of maybe look into 5 years down the line?
Yeah, no, totally. That statement of like my own parents or my own grandparents, right? Don't exactly know what I am doing for work.
Exactly.
Definitely.
That's why I asked this question. It's like people ask me,
right? Last time we had a call, she kind of like was pushing me to say like, oh, I really hope that you start like earning real money.
Real money.
If you like,
Show me
I
your
know
cash.
what you're doing right now, but can you maybe consider like start earning real money sometime in the future, right? Yeah.
Because it's virtual, right? So virtual doesn't work, it's a real world.
I can't even tell her, like I can't even explain to her the conversion, but it's okay. Real money, right? Real money. Yeah, no, I think at Async, we've already taken steps of, the onboarding portion of it for creators. We're very mindful that creative-minded individuals, they probably won't, have the patience to go through the steps of like creating your own wallet. Then I have to keep the seed phrase safe, right? And then all those sort of things. We've onboarded third-party services that basically is like an email login, and then they create a wallet for you on the back end. So we already see services like that popping up, trying to onboard a more Web2, a more mainstream audience. I think it's really on the onus of the platforms to really, like I said, partner with as many different tool sets, many different like use cases as possible to help make that experience easier, lower that barrier of entry for folks. And then as well as like on the other, like near the production end, give them a reason of like, why am I making an NFT, right? Yeah. So much of the public perception right now, and I'm hoping this will change in the future, is that like, there's just these monkey graphics, or there's these like memes that
auto-generated,
and all of a sudden, I could sell it for $5,000, right? And that's just not it. It's going to be a long and probably hard or challenging task of re-educating those folks, just because those made the first initial splash, right? And it's more about like, what can you do with an NFT? There's a technology aspect behind the NFT that really, it could help a lot of people basically. And I think a lot more of the platform, a lot more of the diehard community could really lean into that element a little bit more and help re-educate folks on like, what can you actually do with the NFT? So utility, the community building aspect, as well as just like future facing platforms. Like Solana's team is already building like a mobile app, right? That will hopefully, help bridge the gap. So in the meantime, I think it's all about, preparing Async as a platform to be able to plug into all those different elements and make it a much more easier, much more accessible and fun experience for our creators.
Yeah, and talking about the utility, what are the areas that you think is yet to be explored, or maybe when you have an offline conversation with your colleagues or maybe the industry experts, like what other applications can be more connected to people, like general challenges? I don't know what it could be, but then maybe
Yeah.
you have some other examples that you can maybe explore on.
Yeah, and this doesn't, quite pertain to async, but like we do these crazy brainstorms all the time, as well as
Yeah,
like when I was at NYC, I talked to a bunch of different people in the space. But like think about like your medical record, right? If your
yeah,
medical record was somewhat tokenized, these are data points that you want to take with you to different, no matter what hospital or whatever healthcare provider you go with. You want those records to be, transparent, immutable, and always be very easily, carried around or associated with you as much as possible. So, that's, I think, one use case that I think people are already exploring that, honestly. But there's, I think, just such an easier, like it's just a no-brainer use
yeah,
case. Another fun one we're thinking about is like your Starbucks loyalty card or your, Starbucks Gold membership, right?
yeah.
In case you're quitting coffee, I don't know who would, but like just say you do have Gold premium membership and you're quitting coffee, but then your friend might, want to have that. You could sell that, membership thing as a NFT, and all of a sudden you all benefit
Yeah.
from it. So there's just a lot of, I think, quality of life, something that you want to be able to take with you in a very like easy way, that I think
Yeah.
NFTs as technology could really help.
I like the example of one of the guy gave me an example of tickets, right? So it could be a digital ticket. That could be interesting because that is highly likely that somebody is going to do that really fast, or maybe they've already started that. Maybe it's not that big yet, but then I think that is the most useful one, at least from my understanding of NFTs, right? So that
Yeah.
could be an interesting one. NFT tickets, right? So it makes sense.
Yeah, no,
And
totally. We kind of did that too.
yeah,
I think last year for Dreamverse, Yellow Heart was like a ticket provider. They commissioned one of our artists to make NFT tickets. If you bought the premium, like VIP level, it was a colored version. If you bought the basic general admissions, it was like a black and white version, right? What could be cool, and I think this is where Async could plug in, right? The NFT could change after you checked in to the actual concert or the actual event. Like your NFT will flip to another version, right? After
mhm.
checked in at the ticketing gate and whatnot. So those are, all very cool
Ah,
elements where programmable dynamicness actually makes, like it's a flex. It's
yeah.
definitely like a proof of attendance that I think would be very interesting and exciting to explore.
Yeah, airlines ticket could be another one. Like
Yeah,
it could
yeah.
be really interesting. Like the one that you said, like, okay, if it expires, then it's gone, right? So it grays
Mm,
out or something, right? I don't know. Yeah,
right,
so
right,
that's an idea. Um, there was a challenge, right? In the past, like when NFT started, like the minting was expensive, I thought. Uh, and as for a small artist, I thought like it was a challenge. Is that the same for now, or it is going to change, or it has already changed? I don't know.
Yeah, so to explain the minting fee, right? Minting fee is essentially a transactional cost you need to send to the crypto miners in order for them to commit your change, which is you saying, I'm making this NFT, and they have to accept their change and then, deploy it on the blockchain, right? So when Ethereum, when the bull run was, at its peak, transactional cost is going to cost a lot.
Yeah,
And when it's a bear market, or when it's a much quieter market, transaction cost starts, going down. So now is actually a really nice time to start minting and creating those projects. What the Ethereum organization is seeking to do is move from a proof of work to proof of stake.
yeah,
So when that change does happen, you're also going to see the transaction costs becoming much more manageable, because right now the way Ethereum was built was not it did not consider for those like extreme volatilities, those extreme peaks. If you zoom out, then the creators were essentially competing with, miners, as well as like traders, DeFi traders, right, who are earning more by just trading certain elements and actually creating NFTs. So they were like kind of in competition with them during, the bull run. So, once again, for a bear market, I think it's really nice with transaction fees. And then just, circling back, like async will be blockchain agnostic, right? We built on Ethereum first and foremost because it's the most stable, it's the most used, it's most well known. So we wanted to inspire that sense of confidence with our creators and our collectors, like we are going to be here for a while. But as we keep exploring, branching out and scaling out the platform, other blockchains and L2s will definitely make a lot of more sense, like Tezos, Solana's, Polygon. They all will have much lower transactional fees, as well as it opens up the music and the art creation side to much more layers. So right now, I would say the highest amount of layers one artwork has is around 52 or to the 60s level. But if you were to create an async art or async music on Tezos or Solana, a much more lightweight blockchain, you could go over like 100 basically, and it will not break your bank. So imagine an artwork that has 100 different changes and 100 different unique owners all like participating in that artwork. That'd be, so exciting, I feel like.
Yeah, because this was a bit of a debate, I participated in one or two conference here, in a small group conference, and they were like artists talking about this particular challenge. And I had to throw that up, right? Because you are into this space. Okay, good. So what's the future for Async? Async, right? So rather async.
So I really see us like partnering up with a bunch of different marketplaces, a bunch of other platforms, leveraging each other's creators as part of the future. I think especially with the crypto winter coming in and everyone's like a little bit concerned or just like wondering about the longevity. I think this is where it's really important to show the space that we could actually band together with other premier products and just kind of put our stake in the ground, like we are here to stay. We provide utility. We are here to stay. We were not even like moved during the bull market.
We are fixed. It's a property, we are grounded.
Put our stake on the ground, you can't move us. You shall not pass. But really, like it's almost like a callback, basically. Like we were here before the bull run, and then we'll be here after the bull run, because what we're offering to the collectors and to the creators is, basically a future, essentially, and we're much more viable, much more successful if we actually all work together and help reshape, like I mentioned before, like the re-educating of the narrative of like teaching and onboarding Web2 folks, like this is the possibility of what NFTs is about. Yes, some crazy things and elements happened in the last year, sort of irrational, but do not let that distract you from what this future, this whole decentralized, blockchain-centric future could be, which is a lot more equity, a lot more utility for people in like different countries, right, who might not have the same, privileges or the same, accessibility to things as like maybe like a US-based person does. And there's just so many wonderful use cases that this technology could actually offer you to increase your quality of life. And in the future, I think, to also echo one of our co-founders' thoughts, you might not even know that you're using NFTs, or you might not even know. It's almost like a little investment fund in your, like a mutual fund thing that you don't even know that you're using NFTs. Someone's already utilizing it for you. You're just buying another layer of software or service that is like a wrapper for it. So yeah, I definitely think that there's multiple wonderful use cases of as a platform that's interoperable, exploring multiple blockchains, able to do a bunch of different things for the creators. I think really the future is partnering up, grabbing as many people, like come on board with us, right? Jump on the ship. And then, let's help shape that future for a lot of people who could, benefit from it.
Interesting part. Indeed, like even I have a faith in this particular space, right? So it's a very interesting space, new space. The whole blockchain space is new. Okay, Lisa, thank you. Thank you for making this time.
So
Wonderful
much.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful talking to you, and wish you all the best in this particular journey.